Yeah, we're live. Let me move my cam chair. This other cam. Those are all other guys. Tonight we're taking a look at a lot of cool stuff. I want to take a look at first the cam specs, as I promised last night. We're going to take a look at the 2.2 liter Dodge, and I got two cams from the guys at Elgin. I think that these have been sitting around for a long time, but 2.2 liter turbo cams. So we'll take a look at the specs on those. Then this right here is a custom cam done for the 3800 for the Big Bang motor. So we'll talk about the specs on those. You guys can give me your opinion on the cam specs. So that's this one right here. Whoa! So we'll talk about that. Then we are going to take a walk over, as you saw, hopefully from the thumbnail, that the 400 Pontiac is on the dyno and ready to start. So we'll start it up and see what's going on. I went through all the preliminary stuff already with the Pontiac. It did an oil pressure. It had good oil pressure. We actually cranked it over. I didn't even take the distributor out. The gentleman that was responsible for putting this thing together did a fantastic job. All the rockers were tightened. The valves were all adjusted. As it turns out, this thing also has Scorpion roller rockers. I didn't know that until I took out the valve covers today. And so having the rockers, that's an awesome deal. I never moved the distributor, and it excuse me, I just put the quadrajet on there, put the intake manifold on there, went through the process that we normally do when we're going through checking things on the motor, and the thing fired right up. So awesome job. We'll go in and we'll start it, and then we'll go over some things that I got to change, obviously, before we start making some pulls, and then we'll start making some pulls. It'll be cool. So I'm hoping to do a bunch of testing tonight. Like I said, right now it has the stock intake manifold on it, the stock cast iron intake manifold, and a quadrajet of some variety, maybe the one that came with it, maybe the one that came off of it. And then I also have the 2-barrel and cast iron intake manifold, and then I also have a Holley, but it's a performer and not an RPM, and I'm hoping my buddy Andy comes through with an RPM. We'll find out how much power it's going to make sometime tonight, probably not on the live feed, but sometime tonight I'll find that out, and we can figure out whether or not our poll from last night was accurate or not. We'll see if this thing makes more than 300 horsepower, which would be cool. What I'm expecting is, given the fact that it has the early heads on it, it has compression in it, so this thing at the very least is going to make some good torque numbers. I'm thinking it's going to be over 1 foot-pound per cubic inch, so that will be good. And again, don't know exactly what the cam is, but I know I'm going to have to go through, and I've got to put some extensions, some collector extensions on the headers, and I may even put mufflers on it. We'll have to see. But I want to put some collector extensions on it. That's going to help with torque. But more than anything, these headers don't have provisions for an oxygen sensor, and I will need that to tune this thing. I'm hoping that we have some metering rods for the quadrajet so that I can at least get it close, and we can make it so that it's doing kind of what it's supposed to. Even if I can't get it exact, as long as we can get it in the ballpark, I can kind of get an idea. And then I also have an adapter to allow us to put that quick fuel carburetor on there, so we can put the quick fuel carburetor on the factory 4-barrel intake using a Q-Jet Holley adapter that we have. And then we can also run the Holley on the Edelbrock, because I think that the Edelbrock has 2 bolt patterns on the manifold, so I think that will bolt right on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll see how all of that pans out. Then we also have the camshaft upgrade for it that we could do. I need to check and see. One of the things I don't know about the configuration that it's in right now, it does have roller rockers on it. What it might have is a stock cam and stock springs and roller rockers, although it looks like these are not stock springs, and it also looks like these have been shimmed. So somebody did some work, I think, to these cylinder heads, and I didn't take a spring off to test it. We're just going to test it on the dyno and see what happens. We'll know because if this is a stock, production flat tapping cam, and these are stock Pontiac springs, it would have come on a 400. Then with the roller rockers, we should probably get into valve float fairly early, and we'll be able to tell that. And then maybe we would need to do the spring upgrade with just the rockers, certainly with the camshaft, and that will come later. A lot of times when I do these tests comparing a stock camshaft to aftermarket camshafts, we'll go ahead and configure the motor with better springs to begin with, because the better springs aren't really going to affect the stock camshaft too much. In fact, if anything, it might allow it to rev out a little bit farther. And then when we put the other camshaft in, then all we're doing is a cam swap that's fairly easy. So starting off with something that already has springs, we do that a lot on the LS stuff. We'll run, when I do a comparison between a stock cam and a Truck Norris cam or best cam or sloppy stage 2 cam, the motor almost always has springs on it because I know I'm going to run lots of camshafts, so we put the springs in it anyway and just kind of get it all prepped. So hopefully I can do lots of testing on that tonight. I want to get through all the intake manifolds. I have to say, the one thing on the Pontiac that I don't like on is the intake manifold, and I know how guys cure this, but I don't like the intake manifold pushing up with the O-ring. I don't like that. I don't like that fix. What I'd like to see is a tube, with an O-ring, or the other thing that some people do with the Pontiacs is they'll cut that front part off of the other manifolds. And then if you're doing a manifold swap, assuming that you've done that to the other manifolds as well, we just leave that in place so that the water, you don't have to ever disturb the water passage. Then you could just do dry intake manifold swaps, and that's a lot faster and more expedient. But I'd like to see a better connection there, rather than the way that they run that O-ring. I'd like to see it, like I said, a tube or a hose or clamp or something that I would feel better about. Obviously, lots of guys are running it and it works fine. It's just that it wouldn't be my first choice. So right now it has water in it and it's not leaking, so obviously it works fairly well. But I just don't have a warm fuzzy feeling about it. So it's my one thing on the Pontiac that I would like to change. So let's get going on our. So let's see. We'll. So here's our poll for tonight on the stock 400 intake. Will the quick fuel carb make more power than the Q-Jet? And for you guys that are going to ask, I have no idea what size the Q-Jet is. I don't know what size the quick fuel is. It's just those. So more quick fuel carbon. Stock 400 intake, the stock 400 cast iron intake. Will the adapted quick fuel carburetor make more than the Q-Jet? So we can go over our camshafts. I think I'll start with, this is the 3800 Big Bang camshaft. So this is the one that I chose to work with the ported heads from Turbo Monza. Hopefully those will be done pretty soon with bigger valves. And they're already flowing pretty well, enough to make, a bajillion horsepower once we started adding boost to it. But I wanted to have a good camshaft for it. And I don't know if I didn't give the 220 cam that we had from the guys at ZZ Performance a fair shake. It didn't seem to add a lot of power over the 210, 220 cam that I had from Comp. It just didn't add what I thought it should have. And so I just had one done in specs that I thought would work, and we'll talk about those. That right now, this is a 589, 593 lift with our V6 cam. But that is with a 1.9 rocker. So I'm gonna have to step up to the ZZP 1.9 rockers, because the people that did this cam for me, this is only a 310, 312 lobe lift. So we had to get a lot of rocker ratio to get this thing up in the lift where I thought it would work, especially once the heads are ported. And now that they are, we can take advantage of that. I think it will work better and it will make more power. It is a 226 to 40 degree duration. So we've stepped up from the ZZP cam, and it is a dual pattern cam, which is what I like. It's a pretty good spread. It's 14 degrees. This has a 113 degree lobe separation angle. It's a 106 on the intake and 117 on the exhaust. And as I said, a 1.9 rocker, which I'm hoping that they have in stock. I need to check now that I've reminded myself. I want to make sure that that's there and that I can run it. We have enough valve spring to run 600 lifts, so that shouldn't be a problem. I have the 26-918 springs on it, and the ZZP retainers will go on there. So I'll double check and make sure. What I want to do is, in addition to making sure we have enough retainer to seal and coil binding clearance, which I think we have both of those, I also want to make sure that I get this thing, if we can, and it may already be there, but I'd like to get it within 30 thousandths or so of coil bind, because we'll get some stability if we do that. So we'll see how all that plays out. We'll see what the installed height, and I'm gonna have to measure each one of them to make sure that they're the same, because I know on the factory head they didn't seem to all be that consistent. So there'll be a little bit of shimming and stuff going on, but I think that camshaft will work. So let me know let me know what you guys think. Will that cam work for the Big Bang once we add boost to it? And these are a couple of Elgin cams for the 2.2 liter. This first one is, where are my specs at? Where are we at with our camcorders here? So I thought that they were in the box. I'm gonna have to check on those. I thought that they were in the box. I thought that my cam cards were there. I'm gonna run over there and check and see. Nope, they are not there, but if anybody has access to the Elgin catalog, it is an E875S is one of them, and the other one is an E826S. So if somebody has their computer handy, they can go on and search that, and we can figure out what the specs are on those two camshafts. I'm going to try both of them. If I remember right, I thought one of them was an NA cam maybe, and one of them was a turbo cam. And we'll see how they compare to the factory stuff, and hopefully, you know, the way that it is usually with a lot of this factory stuff is the factory cams are fairly mild, and I say that I haven't seen a situation where factory cams have been the ultimate, although I have been told that many times. Oh, just putting cam is a waste of time. Factory already knew what they were doing. They work great. I can guarantee you that the factory wasn't designing their stuff to make maximum power. That's never the thing. So what do you guys think about the camshaft on the 3800? Is that going to work? Is that going to allow us to take advantage of, let's say, all of the GT45 turbo, which is going to be 750 or something like that? Or will the motor break before that happens? Will the bottom end break before that happens? Or the next step up is some sort of 78, 75 or that kind of deal that's going to take us to the area between the 750 and the 1000. If it gets to 4 digits, that will certainly be a win. That will be junkyard money well spent, and lots of other money from custom cams and 1.9 rockers and heads and all kinds of stuff. So, but you know, that's part of the deal. I'm excited about that. I'll be excited when I am able to. I've already taken the motor down to the short block and taken the camshaft out of it, the front dress, all of that stuff. So it's basically ready for me to do the ring gap on it, and then it will be prepped, basically ready to go. I'm also going to put head studs, ARP head studs, and obviously MLS gaskets on it, because we don't want it just blowing a head gasket, because it's got those, you know, factory graphite ones or non-MLS gaskets, any kind of non-MLS gasket. We want there to be some head gasket strength, and we want that not to be the weak link. So hopefully that stuff will all go together, and then we'll have enough clamping force and enough strength in the gasket, and we'll be able to turn this thing up to wherever you guys can decide, piston or rod decides, hey, look, I wasn't designed for that kind of power. We're not doing this anymore. And that's going to happen. You know, it's going to be a rod or a piston normally. So let's go take a look at the Pontiac now. We can take a walk in there. See, I think I'm all juiced up. Yep. We'll take this out. Take a walk in. Take a walk on the wild side. And we're walking. Yes, indeed. Now I'm walking. Yeah. You know you're all jealous of that. Yeah, two barrel intake manifold. it's all good stuff. So we're going in the dyno. Something cool that was here at Wastegate today is somebody had a 1969 Z28, and you guessed it, it had a DZ302 in it. He was actually driving it around. It had stock exhaust manifolds, it had dual exhaust. It had the original camshaft and heads, all intake manifold, all that on it. And he had put one of the 4-hole throttle body fuel injections on it, and he drove it all the time. It was a 4-speed car, you know, houndstooth interior. It was like the real deal. I was talking to him for a while. It's an awesome car, and I love the fact that he's driving it, and that also that he's doing his own thing to it. He's not the numbers matching restoration deal with the right kind of paint swatch on it and all that stuff. But here is our Pontiac. It's up on the dyno, obviously. Got the fancy headers on there. Look at that. Had to do a little bit of clearancing over here. As you can see, things get a little tight with the oil filter, with our line to run up so that we can have oil pressure. We had to do a little, little persuasion here to get this to clear, mostly on the underside here, so we could our line could clear. But I put you can see I put the the not so sexy valve covers on there. The reason that I did that, we took these off, which will look really, really nice. And I'm hoping that these are run in the car. What's going on with my camera here? Swing. So this is much better. It's cast aluminum. It's got a nice receiver for the valve cover gasket, and that's part of the problem. As we'll see when we start this, these stamped steel ones. You can see I've already got a piece here. Yeah, there we go. You can see right here we've already got it's leaking. So I don't know if the gasket has kind of looped forward away from the rail. I'm going to have to take that off. And if I have to, I'll put those on. The reason I took them off is because we were going to be taking these off and doing swaps and adjusting rockers and doing stuff. I just didn't want to scratch those up. I want those to be in nice condition when they go back and go in the motor. I mean, go back in the car. So I just didn't want to be, putting my grubby fingerprints and stuff all over. You can see we put just a single belt so that the crank pulley can drive the water pump. Got our fancy Q-Jet here. That was one that was just sitting there in the garage. It's got the HEI in the back. You see, he made all wires for it, which is very cool. All those fit. All the plugs are in. Got the Super Richie, as you can see, drive-by-wire. So what we can do is go get the dyno prepped, and we can start it up. So I'm going to take a walk. Yes, indeed, I'm walking. So we're going to go in here for a second. Okay, so put our pumps on. That's all good. I'll be right back. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll start it up, and then I'll take you guys in there so you guys can hear the vroom, 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 vroom. In fact, it's pretty boring in here. Why don't you just go in there right now and hang out? Be cool dyno guys. Because if you were, you would be the only cool dyno guy here. You guys good? Yeah, it's working. It's alive. It's working. It's got good oil pressure. Got lots of oil pressure, which we like, which I'm liking. Walking by the fan, getting fan wash. Okay, let's see what you guys got going on tonight. Okay. I think we're looking good there. Yeah, we're still looking good, so we'll hang on with that. Come on, camera. There we go. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Come on, camera. Man. Yeah, the microphone's gonna pick up. It's pretty loud, I'm sure. Damn, still having trouble with this thing. Dan, actually the motor I think is already broken in. If you look in the and I'm gonna do one, but I think that this thing has already been run. I think that this is actually a used short block, but we'll go through a break-in procedure anyway. And as you can see, I don't know why this thing's starting to make me mad here. There we go. So I think it's already broken in. I'm going to do a break-in procedure anyway, just to be sure. And you saw I have a couple other things. I've got to cure that oil leak. Either that valve cover, either the valve cover gasket is folded in, or it's just that those stamped steel ones don't have a lot of rigidity in the center. In either case, I can put the other valve covers on, which are cast aluminum. They're flat, and so they have a good flange on them. That will seal perfectly. I also have to put the collector extensions on so that I can put an O2 meter in there. So I can put an O2 sensor in there, and we can get a reading on the dyno, because obviously we want to make sure that the air fuel is right when we're doing this, and make sure. And I'm going to take a look at the timing too, and I'll adjust the timing. We'll start out like we always do. We'll start out with something low, 20 degrees or 25 degrees or something, and roll into it and kind of see what's going on. I think, judging by the way that the thing was running and idling, I mean, it was idling at like 650 RPM. I'm thinking stock cam. I don't have a vacuum gauge hooked up to it right now, but I will. I'll hook the vacuum gauge from the dyno up to it. That way we can see what the idle vacuum is down at 600 or so, and kind of get an idea. And that will give us a really good indication on what's going on with the camshaft. So we've got to do that. Let's see, the oil leak, the oxygen sensor. We'll hook the vacuum up, disconnect the vacuum advance on the distributor, and we have already we've already put stops on the internally on the HEI, because that thing has probably, I don't know, 35 or 40 degrees of centrifugal swing in it. So we wanted to limit that so that we can have a normal kind of thing where you have, 10 or 15 degrees of initial, and then 20 or 25 degrees of total, and then that way you can get a good combination of the two. So we want to see, we're going to play with it a little bit. I think that seems like all of the, like I said, I checked the valve lash and all this. It's all good. I think it has a lot of oil pressure. It had 75 pounds when we were doing that, so that's quite a bit. I got new oil for it, so after we do the break-in and stuff, we'll probably put some new oil in it. But it seems like it's working good. Thumbs up to the gentleman who built the car, who built the motor. That's awesome. I like when they go on there and they go together and everything's right. Like I said, when all I did was give it a little bit of gas, touch the starter, and it fired right up, which is, exactly what you want from your motor. So I'll be testing that tonight, and I have my fingers crossed that the 2-barrel will cooperate, and we'll be able to make some runs with that. And then hopefully the Edelbrock will show something, and we'll see what happens with the carburetor. Sometimes I've had not great luck with adapters trying to put a Holley on a Quadrajet or a Quadrajet on a Holley sometimes. But that's why we test. We'll see what happens. So what do you guys got going on? What RPM you're planning to run the 3800 to? I don't know. We'll have to see where it wants to make power. Have you seen the specs on the GMPP 632? I have seen the power output, but not what the heads flow or the cam specs or any of that stuff. Chirping only, no sound. Got a 455 Lenati Voodoo cam, former RPM intake, 6x4 heads with a little port work. That's a good combination. The collector extensions will on this, like they do on everything. It's definitely going to help low speed power. In fact, I would like to put mufflers on it, but I think that the mufflers that I have for the 3-inch exhaust are welded to the extensions that we have for the LS that have a V band on them, and these don't have a V band. I mean, that can all be welded on there, but I don't think that's necessary. We'll probably just put collector extensions on it. I did find the cam specs on the Pontiac cam, if that was your question. Took a couple of minutes for the lifters to pump up, it sounded like. I didn't notice that, and I didn't see that when we were doing oil pressure either. You should hook up the dyno cell fan to the engine for boost. It's a fairly serious evacuation fan. Unfortunately, it doesn't blow air in, it sucks it out, so it would create vacuum. I wonder with the 1.9 rockers if it will lose valve control early. Probably not with as much spring pressure as we have, but we'll see. Quadrajets for the win. So on our poll, we're looking at 60% saying yes, that the quick fuel will make more than the Quadrajet, and 40% saying no. It's got some Quadrajet fans out there. Do you have an adapter you can run the 2-barrel on the 4-barrel manifold? I don't know if we do. I don't know if we have a 2G adapter to a Quadrajet. I'd have to look and see. There's a lot of adapters over there, or a lot of spacers and stuff. We've got a bunch of Wilson spacers, but most of them are for those 4412 or 4415 or something. I think 4412 like circle track 500 CFM 2-barrels to go on 4-barrel manifolds, which is what they run. So I know that there's a bunch of those there, but I don't know about 2G to Quadrajet. Does the quick fuel have down leg boosters? You know, I don't remember. It's in the other room. Do you know how much boost the 340 can handle reliably? It will reliably handle 7 pounds without any problem. Dan, these heads don't run out of flow at 400 lift. The quick fuel carburetor is like a Holley. Hook the fan up to the exhaust. That would work. Richard, you should test with the spacer on the Q-Jet. Well, if we run the quick fuel, it will have a spacer. I don't know. I think we do have Q-Jet spacers over there. We can try it. I've never seen something that loves plenum volume. I've yet to see plenum volume make a difference on anything. I have seen spacers make a difference, especially when you go from a dual plane intake that's divided to an open spacer, but that's not changing it because it's changing plenum volume. So, Mike, you try to snag all the Q-jets off of big blocks. I don't see a lot of those in the wrecking yards. I do like Q-jets, but don't see a lot of them in the junkyards. What about the Excel Super Ram plenum? Are you making a statement that the plenum volume is what changes the power output on a Super Ram? Because it's not. The difference between a Super Ram and a regular factory tune port is that you're dramatically changing the runner length. And on an Excel Super Ram, the lower intake flows more than the factory tune port does. And the runners do also. And as I said, they're also shorter. Are the heads stock? Pontiac heads normally don't go over 400 horsepower. They flow 210 CFM at 400 lift. And I don't even know I don't know, obviously the Q-jet is supplying fuel because the motor starts and it revs, it takes throttle and stuff. So I just don't know anything about it. It was just sitting in the garage next to an intake manifold. So I don't know if it's what it's tuned for, that it even works, whether it leaks. It seems like it's okay so far. Are you planning on using the electric distributor in the future? You mean the what do they have? It's not a Protronics. It's something like that though. Right now it just has the HEI on it. I know she didn't run the stock EFI intake on your recent Ford tests. Which one? The one where we tested the cams, or? I've got a 350 with an unknown cam, pretty choppy. Wheels have pretty high compression, rotating by hand. Would I be somewhat safe with a 150 shot? Yeah, if you retard the timing with nitrous, the nitrous is very cold and it's actually works really well. We don't have an MSD distributor. There is it's not a Protronics, but it's something like that. Put some tunnel ports on. Yeah, it's just some tunnel ports we have laying around. If I have some AC mechanics out there, they're welcome to go change the line on my Silverado. That's what it turned out to be. Mark Sanchez and I were looking at it last night, and I'm going to have to get a new line. The compressor is turning on and turning off, so there's not very much pressure in there, and you can see where oil's leaking out of the line. It's leaking out by the fitting. It's not a Schrader valve, but GM has the one with the little, it's like a little plastic BB valve or whatever. There's some coming out of there. You can upgrade that to a Schrader valve, but the line is bad, so I need to change that line, and then we can obviously fill it back up, and hopefully it'll work. Oh yeah, Charles, we didn't run those with fuel injection because the fuel injection will definitely hold back, especially the bigger motors. I didn't want the fuel injected manifolds to be the limiting factor in terms of the head flow. Rocky Rotella has wrote a couple of books on Pontiac engines. He says 20 horsepower from a spacer on a 400-ish 455. I just wonder would it be there. I just, and maybe it will. Maybe it will get exactly 20 or whatever. But I don't like these kind of absolute things that spacers on Pontiacs make this kind of power. There's no way that that's an absolute thing. There's no way that it does that on a 326, a stock 326 or a stock 350 or a 500 horsepower deal or a 600 or what, it doesn't do it on all of them. It did it on the one that he tested. If he tested it and showed dyno results of it, it did it on that one. What it will do on this, and like I said, I've tested enough spacers over the last 30 years that it varies a lot depending on what intake you test it on. It doesn't care that it's a Pontiac. It doesn't care that it's a Buick or a Cadillac. It cares more about what the carburetor is and what the power output is and what the flow needs are, and then whether it's a divided intake or not. Like I said, we've tested spacers a lot on single plane intakes, and I've yet to have it do very much. On the 400, we're going to run some tests with it, hopefully a camshaft and some different intakes and stuff, and then it's actually going to go in a car. Always change the dryer if the system is leaked down. We're going to evacuate it first before we do that. Mark's pretty good at it. The spacer probably won't work with the ram race up on the car. I don't even know, and somebody, if there are other Pontiac guys here, this is one of the questions I had for the people that were putting the engine in the car, is they have the air cleaner assembly and stuff for the ram air, for the hood, but I don't know if if it has an Edelbrock intake manifold on it and a Holley carburetor, I don't know if that setup will work. Or if you put the stock intake manifold and then you add an adapter and then put the Holley carburetor on there, or the quick fill carburetor, if that would still work. I'm wondering if you're locked into running the factory intake manifold and a Q-jet and then this assembly. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with that ram air setup. Jerry, I would say that the 274 makes more than an E303 everywhere. Maybe not at 1500, but everywhere else. Russell, do you have a stock 440 like from a motorhome? Didn't you and Freiberg have a bet about spacers? We did. I don't have the 400M engine anymore, Casey. So, Russell, what do you want for the 440? Hopefully it's like $12 or something. Run a drop base air cleaner. That might be possible. Ram Air 4 camshaft. I'd like to see what it really did. That would be interesting. I'd like to try some of those things and see. But I would think Pontiac guys out there would know what that is. But I would like to try that and see. I honestly think that a modern camshaft is probably going to be better even than the stuff. We were talking about that with, there's a Hemi in there now. But I would like to talk about, I was talking about with James, all of these old myths about 440s and 340s and all of these things. Everybody wants purple cams and that kind of stuff. And he's just like, that it's not 1969 anymore. Turn the air cleaner lid over it. We do need to do that. I don't think we have a stock one here that I would like to do the wow. Although I got to tell you guys about my first startup on this thing, because Troy was here. And I'm going to have to tell Troy, unless he's watching. On the first startup, this thing had like a 5,000 RPM idle. So I'm like, okay, well, obviously it has a hole somewhere. It has a big vacuum leak, or the carburetor's not tightened down. I was thinking it has a big pipe plug or something out of the intake manifold, because that kind of thing happened. I thought that I checked all that stuff, and I thought that everything was sealed up. because I thought that I put vacuum caps over all the provisions and stuff. And I thought, well, maybe there's something underneath. One of the big pipe plugs wasn't there. I thought that I checked all 3 of those. Then I thought, well, the intake manifold's not seated on the gaskets or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I wonder what's going on. So I went in there, I'm looking around. I'm like, it's like I checked the throttle's not open. I checked the primaries. And then I looked into the secondary. And that's where I found the bolt. Found the bolt that was stuck in between the throttle blade and the side of the carburetor. So it was holding the secondaries open, and it was a bolt, which is not good if that falls in. So after taking that out, so important safety tip, check your Quadrajet carburetor for a spare, I don't know what bolt it was, header bolt or something like that. So that was a lucky save. Dan, they have a supercharged budget Hemi over here. I think it's really good for a boat motor or something. I know he does still owe me $20 for that. That's right. Have you done much testing on spacers using a Holley Sniper? No, I would like to do that. Really, I would not like to do that with a 4-hole throttle body kind of thing, because I think that's going to be problematic. I'd like to include that actually too, to see what's going on, as long as the thing would cooperate and be repeatable for every combination that we put it on. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to run a port injected, like a single plane intake manifold, which I have on some. I think I have an LS one. I think I have a big block one. I'd like to run that with a 4-hole throttle body and then put a spacer on it and see if it does anything. See if the plenum volume changed, because that's all you're going to get with that. I guess you could get some kind of airflow taper or something maybe into the manifold. Maybe that would be a little bit better. I'd like to try that and see, and then try the same thing with a carburetor and see if there's a change one way or the other. See if it's plenum volume or see if it's signal to the carburetor. I'd kind of like to test that and see what's going on. Yes, Herb Adams. I remember reading all about his stuff. He did lots of suspension stuff. I don't know about annulars or down leg boosters for drivability. I certainly have never done that test. Tom, I'm in Southern California right now. I'd love to see a comparison of old bolt-ons that were popular back compared to the modern bolt-ons. Love to see a difference on how far technology has come versus older technology. They made good power back in the day. If you look at that kind of stuff, and putting a Holley carburetor on is, I don't know that a modern Holley carburetor is going to be better than a Holley carburetor that we would have had back in the day. Depends on how far back you go, I guess. Yeah, it would not. It would not have been good if that bolt would have dropped in. That would have ruined our day. Russell, oh, you're in Irvine. Yeah, you're not too far away. I went to UCI for a year or 2 years. Somebody should loan you Mickey Thompson's Pontiac Cross Ram intake manifold. That is pretty cool. What do you think about Vizard's unequal length header? Seems legit, but it wouldn't. It would have to be dependent on other stuff that's going on. Again, it's like the absolute things for anything. I don't think that, because it's so easy to find the one time when that's not going to work. How long have they been running blowers for? Who's they? Dakota, my brother has a Mickey Thompson cross ram for a 389. That's kind of cool. That's the other thing is this factory manifold has the heat crossovers in it. I just used the gaskets that were there. I would imagine that they make gaskets where those are covered so that they don't have the heat crossover. The way they're running it on the dyno, I don't know that that's going to be an issue anyways, but Jerry, the XE274 is the best street daily small block Ford cab ever. I don't know that that's the case. I think there are combinations that I would put a smaller cam in than that. Non-heat conductive phenolic resin spacers create plenum volume. Sometimes the winter loose testing. Actually, the phenolic spacers that they had in 5 liters didn't create plenum volume. If that's what you're talking about, they created runner length because they were spacers between 2 portions of the runner. Whether it's on a factory EFI, the HO intake manifold, the GT40, any of the GT40 base manifolds, the Cobra or the Downs box or any of those, if it had individual holes in it, that's just runner length, albeit not a lot, a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or however big those spacers were. Jeff, I have a couple of Ford FE engines in Chicago. I actually have access to an FE engine. I think after this Pontiac, I probably will take the guy up on the FE. What's the best compression ratio for NA, but with option to use NOS? NOS isn't a consideration for not having high compression like boost is. Lots of guys run nitro through with really, really high compression motors. So I wouldn't worry about that. Subaru people swear by unequal length headers. I don't know what the, I don't know why that is. I don't know, somebody's talking about David Vizard doing this for a long time. He has been doing it for a really long time. I like Dave. We get along great. I talk to him. Remember, test years ago, a stock Pontiac intake was hard to beat. Aftermarket intake was not much better. A lot of times when we do intake tests, and doesn't matter what we're testing it on, a Ford or Chevy or Dodge or whatever, a Pontiac, the test motor a lot of times helps determine what the gains are. So if we have a stock motor with a stock intake and the stock 4-barrel and headers or whatever, the stock manifold probably does really well because it doesn't have enough motor to take advantage of maybe the other intake flows more or could potentially make more power, but it doesn't because of a very mild test motor. When we have more motor, which is like what I did with the 393 and the 333 and the 306, as we go up more in power, we saw one thing that the head kept making more power and more specific power. But if you also notice that when we did head upgrades on each of those things, even though we were testing them all against the stock head, when we did head upgrades, as we went up in more capable motors, the gains that we got from those heads increased dramatically. So we have combinations that can now take advantage of that thing. If we test that thing on a stock motor, it's a head, it's a camshaft, a camshaft will definitely change it. But a head or an intake manifold, we're not going to see big gains on stock or stock-ish motors like we would on more, wilder combinations. And I think that that's certainly the case on intake manifolds. Blocking off the heat crossovers for 20 horsepower too. Nice. So if I could just get a spacer that blocks off the heat crossover, I can get 40 horsepower. 500 horsepower FE. I would think that a 390 could do that if you do the math. You know, a 390 to 400 inch motor making 500 horsepower is not, you know, out of the realm of possibility. I don't know how well the Edelbrock FE heads flow. I'm hoping that they got to flow 250, right? What's the max compression ratio 496 with an option for NOS? There isn't one. You can run as much compression as you could possibly put in that 496 and then run nitrous on it, and it will work fine. The thing that will dictate that is what the octane of your fuel is that you're using. So you can run 9 to 1, 10 to 1, 11, 12, 13, whatever you think is going to work really well, and then add nitrous to that. Hey, Richard, if headers are worth 50 horsepower over cast manifolds on an engine, what are they worth on a turbo versus cast iron manifolds? I don't agree that headers are worth 50 horsepower over cast manifolds. Maybe there's an application where that's the case. But there's no correlation between those two things, between the NA motor and the turbo motor, because we're starting off on a false statement. Pontiacs are cool. Do you use oil restrictors and LS combos with VS Racing turbos? No, I don't. And the restrictor for the oil usually is a function of sometimes whether it's a journal bearing or a ball bearing. – 20 horsepower per heat plug range. I didn't even check these. I honestly don't think I even checked the gap. I just saw that they were gap down, which I liked. Stock FEs, truck variety, 200-ish to 220. But what about an Edelbrock head? How much more do they flow than stock ones? Because I'm told that the Edelbrock Pontiac head works really well on these. I bet money a spacer will get better results with a cast iron dual plane with a quadrajet. So you think, I don't know what you're comparing there. Are you saying that a spacer will make a difference with a quadrajet? Like just putting running the quadrajet on the manifold and then putting a quadrajet spacer and then putting the quadrajet back on there, you're saying that that's going to work better? I can guarantee you that if we put an open spacer on a dual plane intake manifold, it's going to change the air fuel. If you have over 100% volumetric efficiency, will manifold vacuum show boost? No, it won't. But you do have pressure waves going in, providing cylinder filling, and that you can see that. If you want to see that in action, do a search for John Causey. What is it? Advanced Engine Management, Advanced Engine Technology Conference. And he made a clear intake port and stuck his finger in there, and you can see the pressure waves wiggle his finger, because the pressure waves are going reflected waves. That's why they call them that. They go back and forth, and they travel at the speed of sound, and there's a lot of them. And those pressure waves are bombarding your combustion chamber and helping cylinder filling. That's actually positive pressure. You're not going to see that as boost, but you can see it in action. What happened to Predator carburetors? I don't know that I've never run one here, and I don't think I've seen one run one here either. Yeah, if anybody has flow numbers on the Edelbrock head, that's fine. Airflow Research makes an FE head? That would surprise me. Cues yet, guys. I like Sean Murphy. We have one of his carburetors here. We haven't flipped the lid upside down, Randall. I don't have a lid. Yes, on the FE, take it. Oh my God. Butler's CNC ported Pontiac heads flow 380. Are those Edelbrock castings, or does he do his own? A Kent Diggs carb. I've never heard of that. I remember Bigfoot running twin Predators on it though, which I thought was kind of cool. Trick Flow makes an FE head. Out of the box, D port. Is that an Edelbrock head, Dakota, that flows 270? So that's enough to support way over 500 horsepower. A self-adjusting carb, is that like a variable Venturi carburetor? Aftermarket Ram Air 5 Pontiac head, CNC ported, claimed to flow 500. You remember the 4-valve LS heads that came out in the early 2000s? I'm trying to remember who did those. Stupid camera. 460 Ford versus 454 Chevy versus 440. The 440 Magnum is hindered by head flow on those combinations. There are good factory 429 and 460 heads and good factory 454 heads, but there's not an equivalent 440 head. Edelbrock Performer RPM FE showing 270 CFM. See, that's enough to make good power, and then maybe with some cleanup that it goes over 300. What is a Kaufman head? The only Kaufman I know is Chris Kaufman from the old Ford days. What's the best place to draw a boost reference from for the wastegate and blow-off valve on a small block Chevy? If it's a wastegate, is it a carbureted blow-through thing? I like taking them from the intake manifold. Oh, Grooves, that's right. It was a Mercury Marine deal, right? And they were, I thought that they were big too. Were they LS7 based? Trick flow heads, Kaufman racing equipment heads, aftermarket Pontiac heads. Okay. Boost reference right off the charge pipe. No, don't do that. A boost reference off the charge pipe for the blow-off valve isn't going to do anything. I don't have any experience with an Audi 4.2 liter V8. Max wedge versus a tunnel port. Anymore, just finding that stuff can be pretty difficult. I've seen some aftermarket Pontiac heads with exhausts spread apart. Kazi does big marine stuff. What's the difference in a marine block and a standard block? I don't know. Does anybody know that? A lot of times dedicated marine blocks are stronger. They're usually like on a small block Chevy or whatever. They're usually 4-bolt. Sometimes they're prepped. Sometimes they're dipped. Yeah, Jerry. So you have a 671 on a Pontiac, and you took off ram air 4s, that's probably a really valuable head to somebody, and put on Edelbrocks from Butler. Do those Pontiac heads have the middle exhaust Siamese? There's a divider in between the heads, in between those ports, but they do come together, if that's what you mean. The rotational direction and cooling system is different for Marines. Not all the time. They don't always do reverse rotation. As a matter of fact, that reminds me of something. I need to take you guys over and show you something. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to take you over and show you a Marine motor. And not only a Marine motor, since we're talking about FE stuff, it's actually an FE Marine motor, which is kind of super cool. Check this out. And it's a dual quad FE. So I'll let you guys take the camera here. Those are actually the original Holleys. It's a factory Ford manifold. These are obviously Marine exhausts. Guess what heads those are? I couldn't believe this was hiding over from me. So I walked over. Check it out. Those are actually, that's a top oiler. So I think that they only made for 2 years. The heads are not medium riser, not high riser, just standard low riser heads. Kind of cool. Yeah, that FE is really neat looking. I'll be proud to pop the hood and show that thing. Original, what's going on? Thank you very much. I don't, Racer, I don't know what happened to his candid valve ones. I found them. The Pontiac heads are DCI split port ram air 5. I think he was saying that this thing made for 75 or something like that. And they also offered those in reverse rotation, I remember. Reverse rotation. 2 more minutes. Then I got to go do some Pontiac stuff. Got to be a Pontiac guy. There's a sriracha shortage. I don't think that's going to affect me too much. 2 minutes. 2 mas. 2 minutos mas. Big Chris crafts with twin FEs. That's cool. I do like Chris Crafts. I like the ones that have Allisons in them and those kinds of things. Because that's when you know that you make a lot of money. Richard, don't forget to test the spacer. I'm going to go over and look and see if we have a Q-Jet spacer. Had a cabin cruiser with dual 327 small blocks. One was reverse. Yeah, sometimes they do one and not the other. Half of a big block. The Ford ones are cool. Racer, so when they run the engine in reverse rotation, do they mount it upside down? No, they don't. They just put the prop on the front of the boat, though. I think the upside down video thumbnail pictures are a good thing. Is it upside down? I didn't even look. I need to. That's why I send it from my freaking phone. Oh yeah, the poll. Jeez, got so much going on. Wow, 56% saying yes, the quick fuel will make more, and 44% saying no. So we're pretty well split there. So we're going to end our poll. Dakota's standing by his Rocky guy. Make sure the choke on the QJ is disabled or the secondaries can't open. Wow. Okay, that's it. I got to go back to this Pontiac. Thank you guys all for showing up. I'll see you all tomorrow. And boom, and